Huntington Bank Field in Brook Park. It's got a great sound to it, but it's kind of really hard to just envision all of this when it's 4 years away. We'll talk about this and more. Browns 3D on the OBR begins now. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D and the OBR streaming network. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. Appreciate everybody comes on out to the OBR every day for your favorite Cleveland Browns coverage, whether it's in the form of written content from our incredible group of writers, or, of course, the OBR streaming network beginning Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Browns 3D. It's Tuesday, of course, coming up at 7 o'clock. You will have the React, Brad Ward, and Pete Smith. Make sure you all stick around for that. And 9 o'clock, Garage Beers with the one and only Mike Keefe. Certainly some information today from the Cleveland Browns in regards to Huntington Bank Field in Brook Park. It's going to take a while to get used to saying that, obviously. And just some things from the Browns, the closest first seat to the field, the closest last seat to the field. They will have the largest fan wall in the NFL. They will have the largest locker room in the NFL, the largest concourse in an NFL stadium. Let's be honest, it should, right? All of those things should easily be part of, this, what is now the groundbreaking of this $2.4 billion venue. And it better be top shelf. It better be all that and then some. The the cost of it, and obviously with some public assistance, and I'm not going to go too in great detail on this because I'm speaking about stuff that is probably a little bit over my head. But it does seem kind of interesting that, some folks are going to feel the effects of this stadium economically and technically probably won't ever be able to afford to go to any event inside said venue. Stated to open in 2029, so we are a long years away. To kind of just put it in perspective, this stadium would open and would correlate in a timeline of what would be Mason Graham's 5th season in the NFL. So we are a long way away from it. I've heard some people, question, artificial turf versus grass. Again, we're still a long way away from that. The original call is that it will be turf. That's fine, I guess. I don't want that to be the sticking point. I just want this place to be, you know, basically, the greatest stadium of its time, which I'm assuming from the Haslams is, of course, the expectation for what this building is supposed to be. I do kind of, I sympathize and I understand for so many of you where this is going to change and kind of change drastically. I'm sure, you guys speak with such affinity about the Muni lot and, all your time spent there, pre-gaming, of course, tailgating, of course, a lot of you from the time you were children, then getting to experience it as teenagers, college kids, and then probably ultimately going back as parents yourselves with your own children. I think as humans, we are generally prone to be against change. I think we all get settled into what are our comfort zones. Nobody necessarily wants to see change. And I get it. You know what I'm saying? And that's always been whenever I talk to you guys, specifically to you listeners, about your fandom for the Cleveland Browns. I think that's what makes you guys such a special breed, and it has been. Because unfortunately, you guys don't get to wax poetic about, all the Lombardi trophies, all the lengthy playoff runs, the almost Super Bowl wins. But so much about you guys collectively, when you talk about your fandom, it's just basically the experience of it all and, basically the family aspect of it all. And it's certainly going to go from, laid back, you know, fun family Cleveland Browns game day to which probably feels more corporate, yuppity, you know, what will be the 2029 experience of a Cleveland Browns home football game. I haven't been someone who was an extensive goer to sporting events. I mean, I think the longest run I had as a fan and even close to, having season tickets was the early 2000s New Jersey Nets. Me and some friends had bought in season tickets basically the second the Nets had acquired Jason Kidd. And, I enjoyed it. I did. But I also enjoy the comforts of watching a ball game from my couch. I'm different. I know that. And, for so many of you, this has become, the reunion part of your life, where, hey, you guys are deciding months in advance, week 4, Browns, Bengals, who's in, how many of us can get together for this and go to this game. You still can be able to do that, albeit at a much higher price, I'm sure. And, different route of travel, of course, as opposed to, Cleveland and now out to Brook Park. It's not that great of a distance, though. None of this, that Haslam's going this route should be surprising. Billionaires do billionaire things. And at the end of the day, Jimmy and Dee Haslam, as much as they own the Cleveland Browns, Minnesota Timberwolves, and I guess they sold off a portion of the crew, the business folks, that's what they're in it for. I've seen many talk about, well, there's no more outside football for the Browns losing the home field advantage. I mean, let's all be honest. What advantage has the Cleveland Browns had at home? I mean, that's the part I don't get. And I think, as we all get older, our affinity for wanting to be out in terrible weather certainly becomes something that we just want zero part of. But, there are several other aspects, of this as far as, this business. It's going to create 8,000 permanent jobs, that stadium. It's going to create another 5,500 new construction jobs. I mean, these guys are going to be on that land for minimum 4 years because it's not just necessarily the stadium, it's everything else that's going to go around it. So certainly, that is certainly good for, the surrounding areas and, creating work and, definitely a positive for a lot of people. It's going to take some getting used to, and we're certainly going to, ease into this, like an old man into a bath as, we're about to kick off 25. So 25, 26, 27, 28 before the Cleveland Browns, take that jump into what should be this new and extravagant building that can hold venues year round, concerts year round. Probably going to end up somehow with probably a Final Four in there. Usually, when a scenario like this happens, the NFL will reward a Super Bowl being allocated to that area. Heck, if you held one in East Rutherford, New Jersey, when MetLife was built, you can certainly hold a Super Bowl in Brook Park. For the fans that are excited, I'm excited for you. You know, you guys, as much as the Cleveland Browns torture your heart and your soul, you always love them back. So why not a big, beautiful home for a team that you all carry so near and dear to your heart? Kind of hard to believe that, granted, it's a different version of the Cleveland Browns, but this is the same name Cleveland Browns that once had to, run to Baltimore like a thief in the night. For those of you that, aren't happy about this, there's time to change. And I'm not guaranteeing you're going to, you know, and I understand you leave behind, so many memories and, good times that maybe necessarily the Cleveland Browns didn't give you, of course, but, cherished memories of your times going to Cleveland Browns games by the lake. Those memories are not going to go away. You will have them forever. You don't lose them and forget them when you walk away from the building. Those memories are in your heart, you're in your soul. You have those forever. Get an opportunity to create new ones in this fortress of solitude that hopefully brings and becomes a fortress of success. Because I think that's the thing that, about you guys, you Browns fans collectively. I don't think you guys would care if they played in a mall parking lot with broken glass everywhere, as long as they were successful. And I think that's kind of the bottom line of all of this is, and, I'm sure, there's lip service from the Haslams and the ownership group of, we're trying to give our best to the fans. And, you know, I'm sure some of it is meant, how much of it is true. Again, it's business. But I just hope, most importantly, that somehow, some way, you guys get to have this franchise be successful for you all, who have all poured so much of your own time, your own money into being fans of this franchise. Now, like we talk about this, right? And, the crazy thing is, you see it and like you understand what's going to happen some years down the road. And yet, very few of the current rostered Cleveland Browns will be part of it, at least playing. I'm sure they'll wheel everybody in, you know what I'm saying? Bring everybody in, when they open it and, bring back as many alumni as much as they can and this, that, and the other thing. But what will be the 2025 Cleveland Browns? There is a really, really high probability that, it'll be a number in the single digits of guys that actually play for the Browns this year in 2025 that actually even make it into what will be this largest locker room in NFL history in Brook Park. This team's got to. It's good that this is settled, and that's it. All systems go. It doesn't really need to be a talking point ever anymore. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure we'll get little updates here and there, and this is where we're at, and as far as progress and those things. But we could please get back to hopefully what is now the most important thing as far as what my job is, and as far as at the end of the day, I think what we all truly care about, and that's actually the game of football played between the white lines. The Browns will open up, as we all know, this year at home with the Cincinnati Bengals. And looking at the Bengals, I just I agree with what they've done to this point. I agree Burrow, Chase, Higgins, are definitely the main course of what is the meal of the Cincinnati Bengals. Does Trey Hendrickson deserve his money? Yes. Is Trey Hendrickson going to be the defining piece on a contract extension that makes the Cincinnati Bengals legitimate Super Bowl contenders? Nah. Is there certainly a possibility that we could start to see a dip in Trey Hendrickson's play? I'd say it's fair. I'd say it's also fair that, he probably can't stay on the same sack total that he's had the last 2 years. Their defense, it's just not much. And what are they going to have to do in spite of that offensively? But it's a really, really, in my opinion, solid offense. We'll see how good the offensive line is, which has kind of certainly been an issue. And even if it's somewhat good, is it good enough to handle Myles Garrett, who we've seen destroy many a Cincinnati Bengal game plan over the years, and certainly during times where, Joe Burrow was quarterbacking this Bengals franchise. I mean, really no rest for weary. I mean, you could say, and I will say, week one is a winnable game. And it doesn't even necessarily matter the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. The Browns always have matched up well with the Bengals. And certainly in my time since 2017 of covering this team full time, they've always matched up well and played hard against the Cincinnati Bengals, been successful against the Cincinnati Bengals. And then comes week two. And I've always been one of these guys where if you've got games on your schedule that you think are just absolutely going to be a loss, get those games out of the way as fast as possible. So having to travel to Baltimore has obviously never really gone that well for the Browns. I guess it was 23, of course. And then trying to think that Nick Chubb explosion second half was 2019 down in Baltimore because, finally we do it in San Francisco. And, Baltimore, and I'll say this again about Baltimore and in regards to Lamar Jackson. And, this certainly goes in line with probably Josh Allen as well. And I'm not just saying it because they're from the, same draft class, but when comes a time where, when comes the time when it's Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen and it's, you know what, if it's not the Super Bowl, it's not good enough. You can be mentioned as one of the league's best at the quarterback position. You could be mentioned as the league's best at the quarterback position. But I think there's got to come a point here. And I know it's not all their control, of course. But there's got to come a point here where, Lamar Jackson, and I certainly don't want to see the Baltimore Ravens back in the Super Bowl, or Josh Allen get their team to the ultimate game. Certainly would rather see Josh Allen do it than Lamar Jackson, that's of course. But these guys have been such solid players and for such a good amount of period of time. It's fair, in my opinion, to start saying that, maybe a little bit more is required. After that, you just stack NFC North games. Home for the Packers, at Detroit. Then, of course, London's calling for what is essentially a Cleveland home game against the Minnesota Vikings. That's crazy. That's a brutal, brutal run. And then they didn't take the bye for week 6. So not only did they not take the bye for week 6 you're in Pittsburgh, which we all know, other than the playoff game in 2020, has been its own house of stinking horrors for the boys from Cleveland. So I would think somewhere right in there, if it hasn't happened by then, whether it's that Steelers week 6 game or home week 7 for the Miami Dolphins, where if we haven't seen Dylan Gabriel or Shador Sanders, it's probably time to start saying, hey, when are we going to see Dylan Gabriel or Shador Sanders? Because I don't, I don't envision you going 2-0 against Baltimore. I'm sorry, against Cincinnati and Baltimore. I don't see the Browns winning 3 straight against AFC North teams. I'm sorry, NFC North teams. So that should be the time. And again, if we're planting flags on the rookie quarterbacks, yeah, I'm over here in wrist up country. Yes, I think Shador has all the talent in the world to do this. I think Shador can be an NFL quarterback. I stated many times during the draft process and certainly after the Browns ultimately selected him. The biggest thing for Shador is now going to be how much better can Shador Sanders get as a player now removed, from his comfort zone and essentially the only, football life he's ever known. He certainly is not the first kid who played their high school football and certainly had their father be a heavy, heavy influence within that. Obviously, that number dwindles as a player goes from high school to college. But, Shador, again, with his father for the entirety of his college football life. And now it's going to be a little different, you know, because of course, Deion Sanders and the entire Colorado staff can say, hey, we did everything we did, keeping every player in the program in mind and every decision we made and everything we did and touched, manipulated, da 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 da, da all of it was what was for the ultimate best of the entire program. You can say it, but when you have 2 sons in that locker room, people are going to doubt it, and rightfully so. And, as we've seen some great things from Shador as far as, coming to Cleveland, embracing it, finding his way, showing some of just what the individual of Shedeur Sanders is, which seems really, really good. Obviously, we've had our first, transgressions, with, the speeding incidents, which, like, stupid. Just no other way to describe it. And it's dumb. It's kid stuff. It happens. I think people, certainly want to play it up for more than it is. And, back in the day, famous athletes, not only did you probably didn't get pulled over, you certainly didn't ticketed. It probably cost you an autograph. Probably had to sign something for the cop after he realized who you were and, said, "Oh, like, I'm not gonna write you a ticket." But answer in the comments. Is Shedeur Sanders the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns when Huntington Bank Field opens in 2029? If he is, that means Cleveland Browns are probably in the midst of a hell of a successful run. I mean, I'm no betting guy. I don't set lines, but I'd figure you probably figure what it's somewhere, maybe 7 to 13% that maybe Shedeur Sanders could be the starting quarterback for the Browns when they ultimately take the field at Huntington Bank Park in September of 2029. Again, it would be great for this franchise if he was, because that means his team has probably been doing some positive things. And it is interesting. And I've had these conversations, with, some Browns fans through, messages, emails, texts, that, if you're a Gabriel guy or you're a Sanders guy and, any one of us could be right, all of us could be wrong. And maybe that, true 12, 13-year franchise quarterback is sitting on some college campus right now somewhere in the United States of America, preparing for his college season, hopefully getting ready to tear it up and just give himself and put himself in such a great position to hopefully end up being selected by a team like the Cleveland Browns, who will hold 2 first-round picks in the 2026 NFL draft. So to talk about the stadium, certainly it kind of feels like when you were, a kid and you were talking about Christmas morning, but you were probably talking about it in, like, September and making your Christmas list. I think for a lot of Browns fans, when the thought of Huntington Bank Field, it's just so far away. I don't know if you're able to even, drum up some legitimate feelings about all of this, just knowing the time between now and when that finally comes to fruition. It's all about this team here in 2025. And, this team in 2025 could surprise, could show, could be successful without having success, if that kind of makes sense. Because there's a lot of young guys here. And if a lot of these young guys, start to show their wear, then all of a sudden, this team could be a lot better, could be a lot more competitive than any of us realize or are ready to even believe. I mean, the pictures of the place are gorgeous. But again, it's an entire run of a kid through high school or college. My daughter just graduated high school. She will hopefully have her 4-year degree before this place is even finished. It's crazy when you think about it in that way. We always appreciate y'all for coming out every day, soaking up your favorite Cleveland Browns coverage here at the OBR, whether it's the written content or joining us every night here on the OBR streaming network beginning at 6 o'clock here with Browns 3D, hosted by myself. Stick around at 7. You will get the React with Brad Ward and Pete Smith. 9 o'clock, Garage Beers, of course, Mr. Mike Keefe. So keep the OBR YouTube channel rolling all night. If you are not subscribed here yet, do so now. If your friend is not, make sure you subscribe for him. Subscribe over at Twitch as well to the OBR. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network. And we will talk to you all tomorrow.